Hello fleet, and today we're going to be looking at the Kitakami. She is currently the Tier 8 premium Japanese cruiser, although she really doesn't function much like any other cruiser in the game. She's more like an oversized destroyer. Now the Kitakami, which costs close to $50, is quite pricey for a ship, so is she worth the price? Well, let's take a look at her. I mean, in terms of combat survivability, her HP, not good at all. 25,900 HP at Tier 8 is pretty dismal, and that's because the Kitakami is based on the Tier 4 Kuma's hull. And so having this really low amount of HP kind of indicates to you how the ship needs to be played. Very, very safe, very, very conservative, and if you do really make a mistake or if you do rush out there, expect to die a fast death. Now, in terms of guns, the Kitakami really has no viable guns to speak of. She's got these 140mm guns, and she's got 4 of them, but only 3 of them can ever be fired to any one side. That means that most US destroyers can pretty much kick your, so the Kitakami really has no good guns to speak of. She's got this single dual 127mm secondary gun at the back, but to this day I haven't really seen it do anything useful at all. So yeah, in terms of guns, the Kitakami is pretty much on, well, she's pretty much got nothing to speak of there. Where the Kitakami's primary weapon systems lie is in these torpedoes, and she's got a ton of torpedoes. The Kitakami has a total of 10 quadruple launchers, which gives her the ability to dump 40 torpedoes into the water at the same time. Now, these torpedoes have a range of 10 kilometers. They do a maximum torpedo damage of 17,233, and they're relatively fast, going 62 knots. But the 10-kilometer range, again, at Tier 8 is a little bit lackluster, especially because you consider the detectability of the ship. And typically when you're talking about ships that depend primarily on their torpedo armaments, it's really important to get these two numbers. And the Kitakami here suffers a little bit. With torpedo ranges at 10 kilometers, but a surface detectability range of 11.3, the Kitakami generally will be spotted before you're able to get into torpedo range. However, if you throw on mods as well as the concealment captain skill, you can drop that number down to a pretty incredible 8.9 to 9 kilometers-ish. So that means that a Kitakami with all the concealment mods and skills is able to actually sneak into range. Now, whether or not a Kitakami is scarily lethal at that range yet, I'm not 100% sure, just because I haven't actually gotten that Tier 5 skill. Still working on it, but in my imagination, shall we say, that could be a pretty lethal combo, because you're basically a really, sort of supersized destroyer with the ability to actually sneak into range. So that's something that, when I get there, I will probably have some more, I guess, footage or gameplay with that particular setup. The Kitakami has a bit of an interesting anti-aircraft setup. She's actually got, I'm not going to say a lot, but she does have a fair amount for, a ship of this size, as well as, primarily being a torpedo ship, to actually have, a reasonable amount of these 25mm anti-aircraft guns. Now, do they do amazing damage? Not really, but with 3-kilometer range and an average 80 DPS per second, she's able to occasionally shoot down some planes. So, her AA isn't exactly useless. Of course, the secondary 127mm AA gun is, well, pretty much useless. The Kitakami isn't fast. 32 knots does not put her in the upper echelons of speed in the Tier 8 cruiser section, and her turning circle radius is okay at 640 meters. Rudder shift time is pretty average at about 9 seconds. And like I said, the surface detectability isn't amazing. Now, going back to maneuverability for a second, the Kitakami has, I'm just going to say, its maneuverability is deceptive, numbers-wise. Yes, she has a maximum speed of 32 knots, but she doesn't exactly accelerate that fast. So getting to 32 knots is not exactly the easiest thing. When I turn, I feel like she turns slower than a lot of other cruisers. Even though her numbers are set, it seems like what happens is that the Kitakami bleeds a lot of speed on her turns, and that makes it really hard for her to feel like she's actually turning quickly. She, every time you turn with the Kitakami, it's almost feel like, you're screaming at the ship, like, turn faster, darn you. So, yeah, so the Kitakami is one of those ships where she's really, really sort of average, mediocre-ish on her stats, and she really does need the help of skills and modules to make her a little bit better. The Kitakami does have actually one unique thing that's pretty much unlike any other cruiser except for the Iwaki Alpha, is that the Kitakami has a very, very short duration smoke screen. Now, unlike destroyer smoke screens that you can lay and hide in, the Kitakami's smoke screen really can only be defined as an escape smoke screen, and something you deploy after dumping your initial wave of torpedoes and you're trying to get away from whatever ship might be shooting at you. And that's the only sort of viable way I found use for the Kitakami smoke. It's not really like a destroyer smoke that you can sort of, pop the smoke and either lay this massive smoke screen or just simply hide in it yourself. And the Kita smoke doesn't really do that. Now, let's look at the modules that'll make the Kita a little bit more playable. So how I've got the Kitakami laid out right now is I've got the Torpedo Tubes Modification 1, because, it's the Kitakami. Her torpedoes are her main armament, so if you lose them, it sucks. So obviously having a modification that reduces the chances of having the torpedo tubes knocked out is a huge thing. Now, for the second slot here, I've actually opted to get the Torpedo Tubes Modification 2, which increases how fast I can get these torpedoes turned around. Once again, because of the way the Kitakami is, the faster you can get your torpedo tubes turned onto target, the better. And even then, I still occasionally think it's a little bit on the slow side. I don't really offer anything else just because I don't really see the viability of any of the other mods. Weak gun armament A is kind of mediocre. Again, because torpedoes are our main armament, let's just buff those. Now, for this slot, typically I get Damage Control System Modification 1, but for the Kitakami, I just offer Propulsion Modification 1, because her engine, the ability to get away from stuff, is more important than these other things. And it's with a really, really low health pool of only 25,900, the fire and flooding damage really isn't gonna make a huge sort of difference. You're gonna get killed so fast by torpedoes and or HE gunfire that having that really doesn't help you. But the engine, that can actually save you. So typically I'll opt for that. Now, this next slot here, this one's interesting because I've tried both Propulsion Modification 2 and Steering Gears Modification 2, and I can tell you that both of them are okay on the ship. I've played with both of them, and I think the Propulsion Modification 2 makes her accelerate a little bit faster, and as I mentioned earlier, that's one of her weaknesses, that her acceleration seems a little lackluster. But at the same time, the slightly faster rudder shift might help just get her turned around a little bit faster. I think both of them are viable. But most importantly, if you're going to play a Kitakami, you can play without any of these previous mods, but you have to get this one. The first Concealment System Modification 1, it doesn't get it down to a number that's below 10k, but it's really close. By using the Concealment System Modification 1, you can get your detectability on the surface down to 10.17, which is pretty much the edge of your torpedo range, and so that's actually quite important to get to get this particular modification. Now, because the Kitakami is a premium ship, you can sort of throw any captain onto the ship as you please. So as of right now, I've got my cruiser captain on here. So obviously with cruiser captains, I've got my torpedo skill here, I've got my pyromania, I've got some of these things. But really, the most important skill on the captain is this one over here at the tier 5 skill, Concealment Expertise, which for cruisers drops detectability down another 12%. So I think this is a really, 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 really important skill to get on this particular ship. Now, with regards to the Kitakami and the the third tier skills, to the best of my knowledge, this skill here, Smokescreen, does apply to the Kitakami. But once again, like I mentioned earlier, the Kitakami has a very short duration smokescreen. The laying time is only 15 seconds and it doesn't really stay that long. So whether or not you opt for this is really up to you. I mean, you could still get situational awareness just to be more aware of destroyers that might be spotting you. But yeah, like the Kitakami is just one of those ships where, this third row of skills, I mean, I guess just get the smoke. It's probably just going to be more useful just to have a few more escape chances. But really, I mean, how vulnerable the Kitakami is, it really doesn't do too much. I would have to say that the Kitakami, is probably a bit more viable with a destroyer captain rather than an actual cruiser captain. So that is definitely something to think about when you're, trying to play this ship. Aside from that, everything else is, yeah, I mean, I think, maybe getting aiming expertise could help get these guns turned around faster on target. Again, only 3 guns. Nothing spectacular. AA, again, you could get these abilities just to make your AA a little bit better, but again, the AA is kind of meh. So, you know, that's kind of the Kitakami in short. She really doesn't benefit from the majority of the skills on the captain's tree, except for this one here, the concealment expertise. So that's pretty much it statistically. You know, I can show you some gameplay, and then after gameplay, I guess I'll give you more of my opinion whether or not she's actually worth it. So let's go. Let's start with the more positive battles, because honestly, I believe at least it's nice to, I guess, show the good parts before showing you the not so good parts. So the Kitakami is a very, very, very situational ship. If the Kitakami catches, let's say, a battleship in an area where the battleship can't really maneuver, like a narrow channel or something like that, then the Kitakami can do quite a bit of damage. Now, whether that amount of damage is outright killing the battleship or just heavily damaging it, in both cases it's quite a valuable contribution to the team for taking out a really, really sort of big capital unit. Now in this particular case, you'll see that there's an Iowa coming into an area that is a rather narrow channel, and I'm going to start sort of unleashing as many torpedoes as I can towards this battleship. Now, I do have to say one thing, which is, as of the moment, the replay system in World of Warships is a little bit wonky. Some replays like this one are actually somewhat watchable, but you'll see in the next couple of clips, like, you know, things are really a little bit messed up right now. And I was actually trying pretty hard to find, you know, enough clips that were still at least somewhat watchable. Anyways, so as you can see here, I've caught this Iowa in, yeah, let's say a pretty narrow channel, and the Iowa has done the right thing. It has turned towards me in order to minimize, you know, the profile that it can provide me. But still, with the sheer number of torpedoes that the Kitakami can put in the water, I am able to hurt this Iowa. I'm not able to outright kill it, but I do a sufficient amount of damage. Now, this is pretty cool, because you see those two shells that just hit the Iowa? Those came from that rear secondary gun. That is probably the first time in all the times that I've ever played a Kitakami where that rear gun actually did something. And in this particular case, setting the Iowa on fire did net me a little bit of damage. But again, as you can see, the gun's not really that great, you know, and the turn radius, as you've noticed, is also kind of sluggish. The Kitakami isn't really fast, nor does it actually turn really, really quick. It's not a very good ship. I mean, aside from its torpedo armor, which in itself has, you know, flaws, the rest of the ship really isn't that amazing. As you can see, the low HP pool is making it so that I don't have a lot of HP left. So I dump whatever remaining torpedoes I'm able to get off before I get killed by the Miyoko that is escorting the Iowa. But at least in this particular case, my torpedoes do actually hit home, and I am able to bag myself a kill. So, you know, at least it's a viable, you know, trade here, tier 8 Kitakami for a tier 9 Iowa. So, you know, at least the trade was okay. Now, that last replay was actually somewhat watchable, but this one, as you can see, this is what I mean. The replays are a little bit borked right now. I mean, yeah, see where the triangles are? That's not where my torpedoes are. See where my ship is? It's not really where my ship is. So, you know, there's some issues right now, I think, when it comes to replay. I mean, my ship is doing this weird sliding maneuver too, so yeah. Nonetheless, I am going to show you, I guess, a similar situation to the last battle, and in this particular case, I'm looking at the map, and I see that there is a Yamato that is coming up from around Foxtrot 4, and it's coming up between those two islands. So right now I'm at around Delta 5, so if I use the outside edge of this island here right in front of me and I cut sort of downwards, I should be able to catch that Yamato in a position where I should be able to dump off a whole bunch of torps at that Yamato. If I do well, I should be able to hit the Yamato really, really hard and get myself a kill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself turned around here, and I'm sort of predicting that movement. I'm trying to calculate exactly at what point I should be able to get my torpedoes off and be able to hit that Yamato. So as you can see, both of us are sort of coming, you know, I guess towards each other with a little bit of a gap there, and I should be popping up at a range where the Yamato might not immediately be able to react And as you can see right now, the Yamato still, its only secondaries are going off, but its primary guns are not really aimed at me yet. And yes, I'm actually a little bit further ahead. As you can see, my torpedoes were already coming off, but from where like my bow of the ship is. It's a bit weird. This was kind of like a replay issue. That's definitely it's definitely in Warships right now with the replays, and it's kind of making life really difficult for me. Nonetheless, anyways, there you go. I hit some torpedoes, and that Yamato, which had like almost 80,000 health, just after a couple torpedo hits is down to practically nothing. This Yamato should have been my kill, except Carrier decided to, well, steal it. But nonetheless, at least it shows you what the Kitakami can do in the right positions. Well, those are the good battles in the Kitakami. The Kitakami, when you're playing by yourself, there is just so many more bad battles than there are good ones. I mean, there are more instances of this kind of battle that I'm about to show you happening than the battles where I actually do relatively well. So as you can see, I mean, I do manage to get off some torpedoes here. Again, the replay's borked as, it's just, I don't know. Can't do anything about it, I'm just sort of living with it. So yeah, I managed to get off some torpedoes here, but 18,000 damage in one salvo, and it just like instantaneously died. At least I got a kill, but I mean, just this is the kind of battles that happen frequently in Kitakamis. Here's another example. I mean, in this particular battle, I actually had a destroyer on my team that was kind of with me. So I thought, well, there's a destroyer. Let him go first. If there's any trouble, the destroyer can pop a smoke, and then I can use that smoke to hide and also dump some torpedoes. But it's a pub game, so that's a bit of wishful thinking. There are some enemy ships that have managed to cap the actual cap itself. The destroyer turns up towards the cap, so I'm thinking, okay, like, if you run into anything, please help. Maybe lay a smoke screen for me so I can help you out as well. Oh look, enemy ships, and I was expecting the smoke screen, and like nothing happened. And yeah, of course the replay being borked doesn't really help because it doesn't show you where the real ships are. The real ships are a little bit further ahead, so had he actually laid the smoke, I would have actually been able to use that. Instead, no chance at all, because yeah. So in my desperation, I try to fire off whatever torpedo salvos I can, and there I die. So in about like every sort of 10 battles with a Kitakami, like 5 or 6 of them end up like this when you're playing solo. So it's more bad than good. But the Kitakami does occasionally, and I have to stress this point, occasionally, has the ability to pull off something pretty spectacular. Now, I've had to use this clip from my Twitch stream's highlight feature because the replay that contained this particular battle is so broken that none of the ships actually move at all from the spawn. So I really had no choice. I wish I could record an even better quality version of this video, but this is pretty much the best I could do. But every once in a while, and I mean like really every once in a while, like once every 20 plus some odd battles, you do come up with something absolutely spectacular. Now my first wave here catches these 3 enemy ships, this one battleship, I think these 2 battleships and the cruiser, in a very vulnerable position. And the second time around, now I'm just locking onto all 3 ships, seeing where the predictive lead indicator is, and I'm just dumping as many torpedoes into the water as I possibly can. And as you can see, this one battleship took some torpedoes, the other one has already sunk 2 torpedoes, and this battleship is going to die to flooding, so there I get a double strike. That poor cruiser in the back over there, it's also in trouble because no matter how well it turns, there are torpedoes that are, have its name on it. And so, as it turns away, it eats 2 and immediately its HP vanishes. And even though I don't get the kill, I did do the majority of the damage. Did I mention that the Kitakami earlier had very weak guns? Well, occasionally the guns allow you to troll people as well. So in this particular case, I'm looking over at the enemy North Carolina, and I realized that, this North Carolina did take some punishment earlier. So, I'm looking toward it, I'm checking its HP, and I realize it's really low. So, you know, even with 3 guns loaded with HE in the current meta of the game, the HE can do some damage. So there you go. Hey, I set some fire, did about like 900 damage. You know, somebody else didn't get the kill, and with the fire damage, I actually claimed a North Carolina. So yeah, occasionally with the Kitakami, you are capable of just absolutely messing up, you know, other ships without problems whatsoever. But it is such a sort of specific time, specific place, specific location on a map that it actually works. In, you know, in the majority of the battles you play in your Kitakami, this will not happen. So what's the verdict on the Kitakami? Well, if you're looking for a ship that can occasionally generate some laughs, can occasionally be fun, occasionally be somewhat trollish to the other team, then, you know, the Kitakami is okay. But of course, the big issue is the fact that the Kitakami costs, well, around $50. And I think for a ship to cost that much money and to be so, I guess, dependent upon other things like the terrain, the environment, the map that you get onto, what your destroyer teammates decide to do, and things like that, it just makes the ship a very difficult ship, shall we say. And it's not even difficult, it's just a really bad ship right now. But yeah, it's just a very difficult ship to recommend at that particular price point. I think if Wargaming was to maybe try to make the Kitakami better, maybe drop it down a tier, maybe tier 7, so it doesn't have to face, you know, sort of the tier 10 ships. I don't know, that could be something. Perhaps making the ship more agile, so it doesn't just take forever to turn, doesn't take forever to accelerate. Maybe those kinds of things. Now, I am against the idea of boosting the range of torpedoes to like 20 kilometers, because then seriously all the Kitakami has to do is sit at the back and just launch torpedoes, and I don't think that's much fun. So, you know, like, I'm not really sure how Wargaming can make this particular ship that much better. But yeah, if you're thinking about purchasing this, I would seriously recommend against it, and maybe just buy an Atlanta or some other ships for now. Maybe in the future, when they do get around to making the Kitakami a viable ship, then maybe it deserves to be looked at again. And when that time comes, I will certainly make changes to this particular video. Of course, if the replay system gets fixed too, I'll probably do that as well. But aside from that, yeah, that's just my current verdict on the Kitakami. She's not worth the cost that is associated with her, and you know, you might as well just pass and get a different ship. Well, folks, that's pretty much all I've got to say about the Kitakami so far. Oh, I do have to mention one thing, because I did forget it while I was making the video, which is the Kitakami is better when you have teammates, especially destroyer teammates that can help you with smoke. So if you do have a Kitakami and you do want to try to play a little bit more effectively, you might want to division up with people who have destroyers. Now, one other piece of news before I sign off today. As you've noticed from the previous clips, there are some major replay issues going on right now, and those replay issues have hampered my ability to make certain videos, especially things like, you know, the best moments in World of Warships. So for now, until the replay system can be fixed, I can't really do anything with any of the replays you have sent me, so I do apologize for those of you who have emailed me. I did get to watch some of those replays, just never got a chance to actually record them, and now of course with the system going completely haywire on me, none of those actually work anymore. So, you know, I am extremely disappointed with this, you know, system all of a sudden breaking for no real reason, except that it just chose to. As for more World of Warships videos, I will try my best to record directly, you know, battles in game, but that will be difficult because, you know, along with my streaming schedule on Twitch, I am not going to have as many hours to be able to sort of record constant battles all the time. But I will be, you know, trying my best, so, you know, I can at least promise you that much. Nevertheless, if you do want to catch me while I'm playing World of Warships, you're more than welcome to come drop by my Twitch stream. The link to my stream is in the video description below. Aside from all that, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the high seas.